Welcome from LaGuardia Community College in Long Island City, Queens. LaGuardia is one of 7 community colleges in the City University of New York system. We were founded 50 years ago in 1971. Today, we serve about 12,000 degree-seeking students and another 10,000 students in adult education, pre-college, and workforce training programs. Many LaGuardia students are focused on earning their associate degrees in STEM, health sciences, liberal arts, and business. Most of them will transfer to 4-year colleges in Cuny or SUNY to complete their bachelor's degrees. Others, however, are pursuing industry certifications in our adult and continuing education division. These students may want to earn a college degree at some point, but today they need short-term job-focused training in a field of interest so they can get back into the New York City workforce and earn wages to support themselves and their families. Our LaGuardia student body is incredibly diverse. A majority of our students are foreign-born. They come from 158 countries and speak 89 languages. If Queens is known as the world's borough, then LaGuardia is definitely the world's community college. 48% of our students identify as Hispanic, so we are very much a Hispanic-serving institution, and a large one at that, second in size across all of New York State, just behind our sister school in Lower Manhattan, BMCC. LaGuardia is hosting today's event because, together with Opportunity America, we thought it was important to anchor this conversation at a CUNY community college. Now, the Opportunity America report you'll be hearing about isn't just a list of abstract proposals cooked up down in Washington. No, the analysis and recommendations are based on a close look at the facts on the ground here at CUNY and in the New York City economy in which our graduates hope to work. But I'd also like to think that Jamar Jacoby and the Opportunity America organization asked LaGuardia to host this event to showcase some of the innovations already underway in CUNY community colleges. Job-focused education has always been important here at LaGuardia, and we are already implementing, or at least exploring, a number of the ideas outlined in today's report. For example, we're working hard to partner with employers so that our job-focused programs are aligned with real-time labor market needs and employer requirements. We're trying to find synergies between credit and non-credit learning, between academic programs for degree-seeking students and job-focused programs for those students who are interested in skills and industry certifications. We're working with Opportunity America to develop a pilot program that adapts some of the principles of CUNY's renowned ASAP program, but for job-focused learners, making sure that a larger share of them end up landing well-paying jobs in their fields of study. And finally, the Opportunity America report mentions an innovation that we recently embraced here at LaGuardia, using philanthropic support to fund scholarships for students in non-credit workforce training programs. For Queens residents who lost their jobs during the pandemic and need training for an entry-level job in a new field, or who need upskilling to get a promotion and a raise, our new Adult and Continuing Education, or ACE, scholarships have been essential. And I want to pause to send out a heartfelt thank you to the Board of Directors of the LaGuardia Community College Foundation for making these new scholarships possible. Later in the program, we'll hear from CUNY Chancellor Félix Matos Rodríguez, who is going to update us on what the university is doing to advance workforce education. And we'll also hear from a panel of distinguished New Yorkers regarding their perspectives and how they can partner with us. But right now, it's my pleasure to introduce Opportunity America President Jamar Jacoby, who will tell you more about the Opportunity America report and its recommended next steps for CUNY as the university works to elevate job-focused education and career success. Good afternoon, Tamar.
Thank you, Kenneth, and hello, everyone. So this is the part of the program where I lay out a few of the findings in Opportunity America's report. But I'd like to start by putting the conversation in a little context. Why are we talking about job-focused education? And the point, right, is that the New York City economy is changing. Automation is coming at us even faster since the COVID economic crisis. Workers who lost jobs in the pandemic want to change jobs, need reskilling. Longer-term trend, nearly 2/3 of New Yorkers still lack bachelor's degrees, but there are fewer and fewer good jobs for people who have only a high school education. So they need some kind of education and training. And as automation accelerates, workers at every education level are going to need to go back to school periodically to reskill to keep up with the economy. The good news is that community colleges are ideally positioned to meet this changing labor market demand. My organization has a national scope. We look at programs nationwide. I like to think I have a ringside seat on some of the most exciting innovations since Silicon Valley in the 1980s. But what we see are community colleges ideally positioned to respond rapidly and agilely to changing labor market demand. Many have long experience with job-focused training in mid-career adults. Others are pivoting now as the demand comes on us more strongly. And there's a lot of exciting innovation and an abundance of models for Cuny. Cuny is also moving in that direction and has been, especially since Chancellor Félix Matos Rodríguez came on board, I guess it's a couple of years ago now. He talks often about how he wants his legacy to be improved student career success, and I'm sure he'll tell us more about that. I'll also let him tell you about the important strides the university's made in the last couple of years, but that's the context for the Opportunity America study. Our goal is to develop a roadmap for CUNY community colleges that builds on the innovation already underway across the CUNY system and takes it a step further, accelerating that progress toward that legacy goal of the chancellors. We're an independent research group. We were backed in this project by 5 New York City funders who are eager to see more job-focused education at CUNY. And more than 200 New Yorkers had input on our findings and recommendations through interviews and focus groups and other kinds of interaction, educators, employers, community groups. So this slide has too many words, and you don't have to read the fine print in the gray. That's just the names of the colleges. But I thought it might be helpful for those in the audience who aren't from CUNY to describe the landscape just briefly. So as Kenneth mentioned, there are 7 CUNY community colleges. That's out of 25 colleges in the CUNY system, vast, sprawling system. At the community colleges alone, there are nearly 200,000 students, or there were pre-pandemic. It goes up and down a little bit, but pre-pandemic, about 200,000 students. More than 80% of them came from New York high schools, and more than 85% of them are students of color. Nearly 60% of these community college students are in these non-degree granting programs that President Adams mentioned, short skills-focused programs. Many people who don't come from a community college universe that's the tip. You may never have heard of programs like that. This is the part of the iceberg under the water, the part that you know almost nothing about. Students want to take EMT training or phlebotomy training or learn to be a computer IT support person. They come to college for 10 weeks or 12 weeks. They don't look for a degree. They don't take any other courses, and they leave ready to get back into the labor market in a hurry. That's a great advantage of community colleges, but it also presents challenges, including how to pay for those programs, because you can't use your Pell Grant at a program like that, and also how to integrate those programs into the life of the college for the sake of the student and for the colleges. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But point number 4 here, CUNY 101, for those of you who are not from the CUNY universe, all 25 of these colleges are governed, and I use the word maybe in quotes, by a central office on East 42nd Street. But there is, along with that central governance, an ingrained culture of campus autonomy and independence. And that combination has challenges and opportunities, right? Campus autonomy can generate a lot of innovation, but to really change a system, you need somebody steering at the helm. So these are kind of the givens of the CUNY system that CUNY has to deal with and that we faced in thinking about it in our paper. So this slide is really the main question we pose in the study. What's the right balance between a traditional academic orientation and job-focused programs? You know, the time-honored CUNY tradition is upward mobility through academic success. Community college, 4-year college, graduate school, Rhodes Scholarship, Nobel Prize in Science, right? Many CUNY students followed that path. And at CUNY and at other places in the past, there's always been a sense that academic education of that kind and job-focused programs were antithetical. But there's a new kind of way, counter-argument, a new conventional wisdom really sweeping through higher education that all learners need both. Maybe this isn't an antithesis. Maybe it's a false choice. Everybody needs career exposure, career skills, and higher order communication and analytic skills of the kind you learn in an academic program. So the challenge for Cuny is finding the right balance in 21st century New York. So if you remember nothing else that I say today, I hope that's what you'll remember: the need to find the right balance between a traditional academic orientation and job-focused education. But I'm going to use the rest of my 10 minutes to touch very briefly on 4 of the more specific recommendations we make in the paper, ideas about how to improve the job-focused side of the equation. So the first set of questions we asked was about alignment. Are CUNY programs aligned with New York City labor market demand? Does every job-focused program at CUNY actually lead to an in-demand, well-paying job in the New York City economy? Does CUNY produce graduates with exactly the skills they need to meet New York City employers' changing skills needs? And the short answer to both those questions is yes and no. It's true, but it could be more true. And the main fix that we propose is that the central office should play a much more intentional, strategic role, should take on this responsibility of monitoring labor market demand closely, not just in general, we need nurses or healthcare, but we need this kind of nurse and they need these kind of skills, and create incentives for colleges to meet that demand more precisely with the right mix of graduates. And the point, of course, is this would be a win-win for students and the economy, right? Employers would benefit employers, but it would also benefit students who would end up getting much better jobs. The second big area we look at, and where we think there's some room for improvement, is partnering with employers. And this is Workforce Education 101. You can't teach people job skills without knowing about the jobs where they're going to end up, and that means working with employers. Employers provide information on industry trends. They help design programs. They hire graduates, and they give you feedback on how they do, what their skills are. And let's just say this is a challenge at many community colleges nationwide, but it's a challenge at CUNY. CUNY colleges and New York City companies agree on the need for more, better collaboration. So the first step we recommend in our paper is a central employer outreach hub. That would be an address for great big companies. JP Morgan Chase needs 500 IT techs. They could come to Central and say, help us educate these people, help prepare them. But campuses also need better employer engagement, right? 10 manufacturing firms in some borough, each one needs one maintenance tech. They're going to call the local community college and say, help us. So campuses also need to do better employer engagement. And we think Central can help there by providing the right tools and incentives. The third area we look at, mid-career adults. More than 75% of those non-credit students Kenneth and I have been talking about are 25 years old or older. More than 75% of them and about 25% of the credit students. So there are a lot of older adults on community college campuses. And they need very different things than 18-year-olds. They're on different schedules. They need different kinds of programs. They need different kinds of advising. They need different kinds of support. That 18-year-old, he needs advice about maybe the different kinds of healthcare jobs available and how he should choose one. This guy in the pink shirt, he needs advice about how to build on the skills he already has to get a job that pays as well as the job he lost in the pandemic. That's a very different kind of challenge. Lots of things need to change on CUNY campuses to serve people like this gentleman, but the general answer is across the board, a much more focused, more intentional focus, much more intentional, systematic focus at both the campus and from Central on mid-career adults. Last big recommendation I just want to touch on briefly. President Adams mentioned it. I'm guessing that even those of you who are not in the CUNY orbit have heard of CUNY ASAP. It's one of CUNY's biggest successes in recent decades. There's a lot to be said about it, but the short description is wraparound services and supports and financial aid to make sure that community college students graduate and graduate on time. So our recommendation is that there should be an ASAP-like program for job-focused students, wraparound services and supports and financial aid to make sure they get a good job in their field of study. So I'm out of time, but I just want to say a word about the potential payoffs to the reforms I'm recommending. The payoffs to adjusting that balance of academic and job-focused programs that's so critical at any community college. So, imagine a world where New Yorkers of all ages look to CUNY to learn the skills they need to succeed on the job. I lost my job as a waiter. I want to get out of the restaurant business. What do I do? Try CUNY. They'll have an answer for me. Number two, imagine a world where New York City employers see CUNY as the go-to solution for worker shortages and skills mismatches. I can't find workers. What do I do? Not hire somebody from Ohio or have a job fair at Harvard. Call CUNY. They'll have the answers. Number three, real results, improved employment outcomes for learners, better jobs, higher wages for CUNY students. And number four, a more competitive New York City economy. So those are the top lines of our report. I hope many of you will go deeper and consider our recommendations on your campus or at the central office. But now it's my honor and pleasure to introduce someone who really needs no introduction, former president of Ostos Community College, former president of Queens College, current CUNY Chancellor, Félix Matos Rodríguez.
Thank you, Tamar, for that great introduction and also for your work and Opportunity America in producing this report. I have the benefit of having been part of the conversation since the beginning, and it has really influenced my thinking as I stepped to become the chancellor about 2.5 years ago here at CUNY. So thank you so much for that. You have received, based on your presentation, your CUNY 101 stackable credential that you can carry with you for the rest of the day. Also, thanks to Ken Adams and his colleagues over at LaGuardia Community College for hosting this, and also Ken for being a partner in this report, even from his days prior to being a president when he was at Bronx Community College. So we're so fortunate to have Ken at the helm at LaGuardia. I want to thank also the panelists, some new and old friends in that group, including BMCC's president, Tony Monroe. And good luck also being in the hot seat as you navigate the moderation of Errol Lewis, a dear friend, great New Yorker, and actually a member of the faculty at CUNY, teaches at the Graduate School of Journalism. So thank you for participating in the program today. This report couldn't have come at a better time. If we were convinced at the beginning of this journey that the need to improve on CUNY's track record and work on engaging students into the world of work and launching them to careers was needed before the pandemic, the time of this release reminds us that we need to double down our efforts. The time is right to do that, and at the City University of New York, we are ready for that challenge. It's part of our DNA, it's part of our mission, and it's really part of the work that I'm focusing as chancellor. You guys know from the remarks from Ken and Tamar that the recovery in New York City is moving along. Employers are looking for individuals to hire, and there's consensus in New York City from all sectors that we want an economy that is more equitable, fairer, and more robust than what we had prior to the pandemic. On the flip side of that, we know that the unemployment numbers continue to be very high, double the national average, that many communities, particularly communities of color, were severely affected by COVID, that also our small businesses and many other sectors of the economy have been suffering. And we know that also because our students at CUNY that reflect that New York City have also been impacted by the pandemic. So this is a moment to double down, and at CUNY as Tamar's Cuny 101 indicated, we have the scale. We have some of the key ingredients to be able to move this agenda forward, part of the infrastructure, and we have a commitment to this line of work that we hope can be incremented by some of the recommendations in the report. And we're ready to move in that direction. Since I became chancellor, really expanding the work that we do in having our students explore different careers, train and educate themselves for those careers, and later go to those to the world of work and be successful is something that we've been being more intentional about, and we think that it's a key part in CUNY's long-standing tradition of being the key social mobility engine of New York City. Um, we have we have the students, 500,000 students come through our doors every year. We have the great resource of our faculty that can be great allies and great resources to our businesses and to employers. We have incredible diversity in our student body. So we have the scale to be able to provide some of the answers that New York City has for this time as we recover out of the pandemic. And we have also the will. We have a track record of this line of work. When I became chancellor, I thought that we needed to elevate all the work that we do on career engagement. We've made some dramatic changes in that direction. Our Dean of Industry and Talent Partnerships, Lauren Anderson, now reports also to me, to the chancellor, and also to our university provost to elevate the importance of this line of work. So at least twice a week, if not sooner, I have conversations with Lauren about how we're going to be more nimble and how we continue to advance the work that we do in this area. We also want to invest a lot more in our campuses because that's where our students are trained, and we want to bring in our faculty and staff as key partners so that as they engage our students, they are part of the conversation of inviting students to think about their careers, to think about their future, to get ready, to connect them to industry and to employers, and themselves to be connected to employers and bring that curriculum, that expertise of what's happening in the field into our campuses. We have made, I think, some very solid strides in this direction. I was very fortunate to be a partner for the newly created New York City Job CEO Council that Jamie Dimon for Jamie Morgan Chase organized with about 30 of the largest industries in New York, and we already are creating new credentials and new curriculum to benefit hundreds of students in CUNY, getting direct input from employers and creating a pipeline that would lead to paid internships, and then hoping that those paid internships convert into real jobs for our students. We're also taking a sector approach. We began with the finance sector, which is an area where we've had a lot of success in the past, but thanks to the partnership of initially Centerbridge, we created a program that provided additional training and expertise to students interested to going into the world of finance. And it was so successful that what we learned allowed us and Centerbridge to reach out to Bloomberg and Goldman Sachs. And now we have the CUNY Futures in Finance program that is now being replicated in several campuses. And we hope that we can continue to replicate it and then also take what we learned there and take it to other sectors of the economy to create, again, this employer-driven programs providing work experience to our students and getting them ready for jobs right after they graduated. Very proud of the work this summer of the Cuny Recovery Corps. We had about 4,100 students in paid internships in the summer, working along with many of the nonprofits or the agencies that were helping New Yorkers to recover. Many of you have heard me use the expression that I want to be known as a patron saint of paid internships for CUNY students. We have the data that shows that the students who participate in paid internships graduate faster, get a job faster if they go into the job market, and they also receive additional dollars. And if you think that about half of our students come from families that make less than $20,000 a year, you know how important it is to put money into the pocket with the additional of getting the networks and the connections of being at work. And we want to continue to innovate in the sector of internships and in the conversion, right? Making sure those internships then translates into getting jobs. And one last thing that I'll mention, very, very proud, we launched it right after when the pandemic, the first surge hit us in New York, the upskilling challenge. We're very worried about our students who were graduating in the class of 2020, and they were probably going into the worst labor market in history. We wanted them to be able to have tools to better interview, to be ready, to know which some fields that they were hiring, and we put a platform of free and online resources that were available to CUNY students, but also to all New Yorkers. And we've had about 30,000 individuals participate in those programs, and with the support of some funders who are here in the audience and other foundations, we hope to continue to improve on that upskilling challenge work, which has been so successful. Thank you again, Opportunity America, for this report. There's some things that we are already engaging, and actually Ken mentioned some of them, of the ones that he's doing over at LaGuardia. And there's also others that now will allow us to continue to push the envelope in some of these key areas. I think is one of the four key areas that Tamar identified in her bullets, the labor information market. We had that information available. We are producing that. We are a university, so we produce information for others, and but it was not being shared. Now that information that we produce is being sent on a monthly basis to all our provosts and many other academic leaders in the university, so they can make informed decisions based in actual real-to-date data on how the New York labor market works. And we're trying to make that data more user-friendly so that it can be a factor in all the programs that are created at CUNY from now on. The report also suggests that we need to do a better job in tracking who are the students who come into our non-credit programs, and we are now procuring for an integrated information system that would allow us for the first time to have similar information about the students that are attending for credit and those who are attending non-credit courses. That would allow us to better serve all those students and to be able to put them into the right path in their education. So another recommendation that we are already working on that. Last year, we went into system changing exercise to ramp up the way that we provide credit for prior learning or past experience. Now there's a uniform policy all across CUNY about how it needs to be done, and we began working with all the faculty in all the areas so that we have the mechanisms to assess that prior learning, that previous experience that students bring, particularly our adult learners who are out there, so they can benefit from that experience and accelerate the pace of their education at CUNY. So we're really looking forward to that becoming an ingrained part of our culture so that people know that we do this and it can accelerate any training program that that they come to take at CUNY. Also, recommendation in the report is that we ramp up our work on stackable credentials. That's something that many of our community colleges are doing. And Kingsborough and LaGuardia do it with healthcare, BMCC and Queensborough with technology, also some BCC in youth development and in healthcare. And we will continue to do this as we move forward. We also, and it's one of the recommendations in the report, want to really be thoughtful about how do we engage centrally in the campus with employers. What is the right mix? What are the things in which it makes sense for the employers to just come into one door at Cuny and then either be able to work with the central office in programs that affect all our campuses, or might be referred to a campus that has a particular expertise, or because the employer wants to work in one specific borough, for example. I think that's a recommendation that we've been trying to think about what the right mix is and what be the right level of staffing here at Central that we would need to be able to do that, and the outreach so employers know that this is the gateway to come to work with Cuny. And again, I don't want to go into other recommendations. We have the panel to be able to be talking about all these things. I just want to acknowledge to everybody that we are committed to this work. I am very, very excited at the fact that in our community colleges we have new leadership in 5 of our 7 colleges, and very committed leadership in the other 2 where they have a bit more seniority, and they're doubling down in this and embracing many of the ideas in this report. Our dean of industry and talent, Lauren Anderson, also comes with the agenda to help us really become a powerhouse in this area, and to do it through collaboration with employers and with many nonprofits. We have also, and I wanted just to close by highlighting 2 programs that show this trend of the things that we're doing at CUNY. One is our internship to employment program, a pilot program. Some of the funders in the audience were a key part in the pilot that we began at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and it's part of our commitment to work with the small businesses in New York so that they can become more aware of the talent that we have in CUNY, have our students participate in internships, and later on employ them as a result of those opportunities, as a result of efforts with with the mayor's office. We're going to triple the number of students who are participating in these kinds of programs with small businesses. And we're also very proud of another program, the Tech in Residence program, which has experts from all the leading industries out there participating as adjuncts, teaching classes in CUNY, so our students have the benefit of the latest of what they is happening in industry, the latest in what the business community has to offer, and they come and they teach our students. They become part of our faculty, helping our existing full-time faculty to get better networks in the business community, and then creating paths of opportunities for students. We have about 100 of these adjuncts in the system over the past 2-3 years, and about 3,000 students have benefited from the courses that they have taught. So again, very proud of the work that we have done, but restless and willing to do more, and acknowledging that because of our mission of social mobility, because of our mission of being anchor institutions in the boroughs in New York City and the communities, that we need to double down on this effort. So you have my commitment and of engagement in this area, and we're fortunate that we have the partners that we have in the philanthropic, the business community, and in government to help us to do that. So thank you so much. I look forward to hearing the comments from our panelists, and to continue working with all of you for a better quality of life for all New Yorkers.
Thanks very much, Chancellor. I'm Errol Lewis. I am the political anchor at Spectrum News New York One. And as was mentioned, I've also been on the adjunct faculty for about 10 years at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at Cuny, and have really enjoyed working with Chancellor Rodríguez on this question. This is the second panel we've done on this topic, and I know that there's a lot more to be done. The time is short, so I'm going to introduce our panel and start the discussion, and we'll give a last word to the Chancellor shortly before we end at 5 o'clock. Farhad Asghar is with us. He is a program officer at the Carnegie Corporation of New York, overseeing grant making that supports creating flexible pathways for students throughout their K through 16 education. The goal, of course, is college completion, as well as preparing students for work and careers. I should mention that Farhad has worked as a public high school teacher and as an associate dean of Bank Street College of Education. Stephen Fagan is with us. He's the director of tech talent at American Express, where he works on a program called New Path to Tech Jobs, something we certainly want to hear more about. Anthony Monroe is the 11th president of the Borough Manhattan Community College, the largest of the CUNY campuses with more than 24,000 students. He previously served as president of Malcolm X College in Chicago and Essex County College in New Jersey. And Sandy Vito is executive director of the 1199 SEIU Training and Employment Funds. They provide training, job placement, and quality improvement programs to over 700 healthcare employers and 250,000 workers in New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Florida. So I welcome all of you panelists, and I want to jump right in with you, President Monroe. The Opportunity America report calls for more campuses to try and combine degree granting and non-degree granting work under one roof in a hybrid entity that would serve both degree seeking and non-degree seeking students. Think out loud for a minute or so about what you'd have to do that work. Somebody in your position who'd have to be one of the prime movers. I know you've got a million other things you've got to work on, from COVID restrictions to making sure the heat comes on when it finally gets cold here in the winter. What would you have to do to make some the kind of transformation that's being called for in this report?
Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis, and thank you, Tamar, for bringing us together, and to my Chancellor, Felix Matos Rodríguez. Thank you for your strong leadership, and my colleague, Ken Adams. We're in the trenches together. Errol, that's a great question, and just a little bit of context before I dive into it. We may be aware that many community college students, especially Black and brown male students in the United States, do not complete a credential or degree, facing dramatically reduced earning potential. However, we know that the evidence suggests that helping students navigate the college environment or the college experience and connect their coursework and their personal life experiences and accomplishments in their lives will help them with college completion, ultimately with social and economic mobility. Take someone like myself as an example. 14 years is what it took for me to complete my undergraduate degree. Now, the needs that I had as a recent high school graduate attending CCNY were very different from the needs that I had 10 years into my college and my professional life experiences. So understanding the dynamic challenges and needs of our students and how we as community colleges, and I believe it was mentioned earlier by Tamar, that we are perfectly positioned to be flexible and nimble to address the needs of various industry and that of our students and our communities is critically important. And so when we look at the role of community colleges, it is to prepare students for the workforce. It is also to prepare individuals to transfer and to ultimately get a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and beyond. And there's room and space for both. And I believe our chancellor has been very, very clear about that as well. It's not one or the other. So helping our college community, which includes our staff and our faculty, who are absolutely phenomenal, understand the needs of our students, understand the needs of employers, and how we can put systems in place, whether it's prior learning assessment, CLEP exams, internships and paid apprenticeships that will garner and secure appropriate academic credit to allow students to get to that point of credential and degree completion in a stackable perspective, in a in a manner which would allow them to complete their credential in a timely manner, is what we need to do. And I believe we're on that path at CUNY and certainly at BMCC.
Okay. You remind me. My late father was a NYPD officer, and he went through John Jay, and it took about 11 years to get the bachelor's degree because it was off and on, and he was working and had 5 kids and all, and very much part of that kind of process. Sandy, Vito, I'd like to ask you. The report calls for research on the evolving economic needs to help schools tailor their curricula and their certificate programs to the needs of employers. That sounds very simple and straightforward, but obviously, if it was easy, everybody would already be doing it. What has been your experience in keeping up with a dynamic and fast-changing economy? And what are some of the best practices that CUNY should follow?
Well, so I think we have the advantage of having worked with CUNY for decades in the allied health career pathways. So we were founded in 1969. It was maybe a decade after that. We have a program called the Healthcare Core College Curriculum, or HC4, that takes all of the prerequisites for healthcare, English, bio, psychology. Students go together in that program. It's our members, 99 members, and again, we're jointly governed by the employers and the union. And then they can transfer after they take those basic credits into nursing, into respiratory therapy, into social work, and that allows for some of what we're talking about, moving from those non-credit certificates, trying to grant credits for some of that learning, getting those prerequisites behind you in a very supportive environment, and then moving on to the degrees, which moves you into a middle-class life. I think one area that we started working with, he's not so new anymore, and we've known him forever, but Chancellor Matos Rodríguez. Another area where I think there's some best practice that's needed, particularly for our adult learners, is transcript evaluation. When people think of workforce development, and this report makes it very clear, they think of here's the non-credit certificates and here's the degree. Healthcare, like many industries, you might start as a home health aide, become a CNA, LPN. We have 40,000 people who go through programs like that, go on to respiratory therapy or nursing. About a third of our members do that in CUNY. And the important thing is that you need to be able to transfer, because it might take you, as you said, 8 years to get through that pathway. But it is a pathway for adult learners. And because so many of our members and New York City are immigrants, that transcript evaluation for adult learners includes overcoming some inequities in healthcare, where immigrants, particularly from Black and Brown countries, are often not awarded the kind of credit that people who might take a biology course in Europe get awarded. So really looking at those credentials and having maybe a center for adult learners who are, in many cases, 40% of our members, again, immigrants, and evaluating those credentials and helping to support those career pathways, I think are some of the best practices.
Okay, and I had a question, Sandy. I've just been curious about this. What happens if there's sort of a mismatch between what's being taught and what jobs are available? Obviously, with technology, different procedures, frankly, different laws. If you're talking about healthcare and certain other fields, that might make certain procedures either obsolete or different learning processes needed that need to be updated quickly. How do you do that, and what does the adjustment process look like?
So for us, Chancellor Matos Rodríguez appointed a new dean for Health and Human Services, and what's happening in our industry is acute shortages. So we had a lot of grief loss during the pandemic in the healthcare industry. Lots of people also retired because of the stress of the jobs. So we have now a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage of respiratory therapists. So the ability not just to have programs, the MCC, for instance, has a respiratory therapy program, but to expand capacity in those programs is essential. And the consequence of not doing that, in healthcare, it's pretty aligned. The education is pretty aligned because it's so regulated. But the consequence of not having the capacity is that we have shortage areas in the industry. These are great middle class jobs, but it impacts all of our health ultimately, particularly in a time when people like nurses and respiratory therapists and social workers are so needed. So it really has a societal impact, not just an industry impact.
Okay. Stephen Fagan, the sheer size and diversity of CUNY with the couple of dozen campuses presents, I imagine, a real challenge for employers who want to partner with the school. What are some of the needs that CUNY planners and leaders of the kind that are on this conference, what do they need to be aware of as far as how they can best work with you?
Yeah, definitely. The diversity is an asset in the respect that companies that value diversity see CUNY as a great resource, but with that comes the complexity of the system. I heard a lot of really good things from what Tamara and the Chancellor said about creating a one-stop shop for employers. I know the CUNY system relatively well, but I'm one person at one company, and even I have trouble keeping track. And at the end of the day, I'm campus agnostic. What I'm looking for are programs that are plug and play, where an apprentice model or an intern model is ready for us to just provide the employer side, the work experience. And of course, participating in any upfront preparation for that, whether it's curriculum review, talking about whether we want students to go through a boot camp or a micro-credential before showing up. So for example, in the case of a software engineer, they can code from day one. For us, an internship, it leads to employment, and that's why we do it. We look at it like an extended job interview, so very much support the Chancellor's model of paid internships leading to employment as well.
And I was curious to the extent that you've got competitors out there. Are you mindful, or do you need to be mindful of that when you're trying to, connect with people and bring them into your system?
It hasn't occurred to me yet. I think the system is big enough. I think there are enough students to go around. It's such a massive system, and even just from a technology perspective, the number of students coming out from those fields is so large. We're actually partnered right now with Citibank on a pilot with an apprentice model with Queensborough Community College, and we're happy to work with them. We're going to probably run slightly different tracks, but we'll be able to share what we do. And there are probably similarities in how we run our internship programs, and so we can learn from each other. So I think for now, it's actually benefiting us to be collaborative with what we might consider our competitors. I don't see it as a competition for talent.
Okay. And Farhad, there's a considerable amount of institutional and cultural history that puts pursuing a college degree and pursuing a job or job-related certification, it really sort of separates them. They're seen as two different endeavors. How do we break down those distinctions? And in particular, what should we be telling students about this question?
It's a great question. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm super humbled to be on this panel, and greetings from the Carnegie Corporation of New York. I think to truthfully to answer that question completely, we need to first recognize that our education system, both K-12 and higher ed, is doing exactly what it was designed to do, right? So as the reality we face as a nation around post-secondary success is impacted by the fact that public education wasn't designed to prepare all students for colleges and universities, and higher education wasn't designed to take in most American students. And there exists structural inequities in American education leading to the several barriers that we know about post-secondary success. So as a result, the way the system is now configured forces high school graduates into a false choice, right? Either enroll in college, delay income while accruing debt, or find entry level work and lower chances for social mobility. And as we think about the reality and the need for transparency, to answer your question more directly, what we really need to do is help make sure that the folks who operate the system understand that the realities around braided pathways from education to employment that we need, and in making sure that students and families understand and appreciate the multiple pathways to post-secondary success. To put it quite bluntly, we've had a failure to effectively update the educational system, which has led to the reality that we have policymakers cynically questioning the value of college degree without investing in other viable post-secondary options. And all the while, the local economy in New York faces a steady decline in the number of good-paying jobs for those with just a high school diploma. But the growing understanding hasn't permeated all the way to the throughout the American consciousness, right? Families continue to see affordability of higher education as big concerns, daunted by the complicated processes, unclear about other viable pathways. And just to kind of bring it home, before I joined philanthropy, I worked in college access for a number of years. It's very personal for me. I'm a double first-gen kid, American and college, grew up in Queens, reading your column over the years. And when we immigrated to the States when I was 11, we those first few years, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think Carnegie and Gallup did a survey just lifting up the voices of families. And what families are asking for is families say, we know bachelor's is the gold standard, right? But we also recognize that there are other viable pathways. How do we get information about this? And ultimately, the reason why we're so excited about supporting the study is because community colleges and public colleges and universities, CUNY specifically, have long promised to make post-secondary opportunities affordable and accessible to all. You're talking to an alum of Brooklyn College who's married to his college sweetheart, who's a social worker as well. And our social mobility in our family is because of the power of CUNY. But despite enrollment, persistence, and completion challenges, community colleges remain the powerful tool to increase the social, economic, and civic mobility of all students. What we need to do is just make sure that we're connecting the system, creating a line between K-12, higher ed, and the world of work, because we need solutions that present an all-one system perspective.
Okay, panelists, we have only a few minutes, so we're going to have some CUNY audience questions that were gathered, and I'll direct them to individuals. This obviously goes to you, President Monroe. The question is, if I was the president of a CUNY community college and could do just one thing to move in the direction that you're all suggesting, what should that be?
There's so many one things. But I think recognizing that there is plenty of room and opportunity to accomplish the goals as set out in terms of economic and social mobility. And it's not one or the other. It's not credit versus non-credit, but it's actually finding that sweet spot that community colleges are so experienced in, and that is being responsive to the needs of the community and helping communities get the education and training necessary so that they can move up the social and economic ladder. So investing in community colleges because the ROI, or the return on investment, is many times greater than the investment.
This is a question for Farhad. As a funder, when you look at a proposal from a college or a non-college group that wants to partner with the college, what's the first thing you look for? What are the must-have characteristics?
So look, I'll answer that question directly in a second, but I think what we need to understand is, like, if successfully deployed, philanthropy can really has three superpowers, in my humble opinion: seeding and supporting innovative models. So that's one thing we should look at: creating visibility for and connections between grantees, right? And then really pushing on the policy side where the real resources lie. So in my work, I'm looking at three simple things: the opportunity for alignment between K-12, higher ed, and the world of work. Traditional post-secondary completion, but in flexible ways, because despite multiple pathways, community colleges have the most to offer for workforce development, as President Monroe just stated. And last but not least, the development and promotion of multiple pathways to college and careers, because American families need and are demanding options that combine academic and work-based experiences. So the last, what I would look for, and we do support lots of partners that CUNY works with. I would love to kind of raise a few of them: Project Basta, Braven, Cura Labs, the Association of College University Educators. And what all of these organizations that do similar but different work have in common is the ability to cut through the noise, be pragmatic about partnering with an incredibly robust system and deploying resources right at the practitioner direct service level. I have a practitioner bias because we know that what people are doing right now in CUNY to serve young people, funders, policymakers may not even learn about this stuff for 5, 10, 15 years if we're lucky.
Okay. This is a question for anybody who can answer it. I'm a New York City employer. Even in the best of times, I have a hard time finding skilled technical workers. Now it verges on impossible. Can CUNY help me, and how do I establish a relationship with someone at a CUNY college? Who do I call, and where do I go?
You can call me, and the answer is yes, we're here. We welcome the opportunity to work with our employers and our community at large and our government and philanthropy partners for the betterment of the city of New York. And so reach out to us and we will get connected and move things forward.
Okay. That brings us to our last few minutes, and I wanted to go back to Chancellor Rodríguez. I wanted to, I guess, get some of his reactions to some of what we've discussed, and he can wrap it up for us.
Well, thank you so much, Errol, and I'll say a few things. I mean, we are, like this report, we are fortunate to have some incredible partners that are vested in the work that we do. Is based on a track record of success, but also a track record that needs to be improved, and we embrace both of those ends. I remember, for example, when I was at Ostos, many things that I learned about improving some of our programs in healthcare came from the partnership with 1199, and Sandy was there, right, giving us that feedback. So we need to always continue to have those loops of improving our systems, our delivery, and our curriculum coming from, at times, labor partners, nonprofits, but then also from industry. From Stephen and his colleagues at American Express. We know, for example, that our students need to be have more practice-oriented and project-oriented work that they can then showcase when they go into an interview, right? So that's something that we take back and we try to create the experiences in the curriculum or in other activities so the students have that in their portfolio when they go to if they go to an interview, right? And also to think a little bit about flexibility, that in many cases, and the upskilling challenge that I mentioned earlier, for example, provided students additional tools when they were going into an interview to get ready to be competitive in those instances. One of the things, for example, that we need to do better is not just the technical part of the curriculum, but, you know, for example, when we're at Queens, we began piloting a course that might be required for all incoming freshmen or new students. And one of the things it did is that it forced you immediately to go to career services to make that connection. A lot of students wait until later in their career, particularly if they have no role models at home, to then do that, and it's too late. We want you to make that connection and get those resources, and we want faculty to embrace that as much. When Errol is teaching his classes in journalism, obviously as a practicing journalism, you are thinking about how you're going to get your students to be ready to get jobs. Our faculty that are experts in other areas, you know, need to give tools to the students to do that. If your students, for example, are taking an anthropology class, right, they do a great job working in marketing because they're people who are sensitive to learning about different cultures, right? And these are some of the key things you need when you're trying to market different products. And we need to give our students the language so that they also, when they're out there, they can showcase the things that they have done. And this can be done through our career services investments, and also if things are embedded into the curriculum. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm fortunate to have incredible colleagues that are committed to this line of work. In the community college sector, for example, Our community colleges have traditionally been more transfer oriented. We don't want to lose that. That's part of the CUNY sort of social mobility pathway. But I've also told the presidents that they can also in their mix look more like some community colleges in other part of the country that are more geared towards shorter credentials and applied degrees. That there's nothing that path is equally important to New Yorkers and the economy, and that if we do a good job, if you do a good job with a credential with any program, that student is going to want to come back for more. They're going to need it. And if you do a credible job, if you embrace them, if you meet their needs, whenever they need any additional education, and we're in a world of lifelong learning, they're going to come back to CUNY. And that's what we want ultimately in a cycle, so that at whatever point in your career, you know that CUNY is going to have an answer for whatever needs you might have in the educational realm. So committed to that work. Thank you to the partners for helping us to get there, for helping us and pushing us to be better and do better. And I'm excited about that line of work. And to all of you who are their employers, no better talent than our CUNY students, great talent in our faculty, also as partners. So we're here to serve the city of New York, and we do it with joy. Thank you, Errol, for moderating and your great work always.
Okay, thank you very much, Chancellor. That brings us to the end of our time. I want to thank everybody for participating. We certainly thank everyone who watched. I want to mention to folks that if you have not seen the report, or if you'd like to share it with others, you should go to opportunityamericaonline.org. That's where you can find the report. And this video session in the next day or two should appear on that website as well. And of course, you'll be able to link to it and send it out to friends and associates, and we will keep this conversation going. For now, though, we're going to say goodbye, and we thank you all for participating. So long.